Begin with the Shear idol, a truly monumental piece of wooden sculpture. And it wasn't found in some grand royal burial chamber or anything like that.
Not at all.
Its discovery happened way back in 1890, almost accidentally, by gold miners working at a peat bog. This was near Kirovgrad in the Ural Mountains of Russia.
And that location, the peat bog, is quite literally the entire reason we even know it exists. Peat bogs are miraculous preservers. They are intensely anaerobic environments.
So no oxygen.
No oxygen, which creates this acidic barrier to decay. Had this sculpture been left even a few feet away in standard soil, it would have it would have disintegrated thousands of years ago, gone forever.
And the preservation of the wood is what allowed for what you can only call an age shock. Initial estimates back in the 19th century were pretty conservative, maybe a few thousand years old.
Right, that was the thinking. But modern high-precision carbon dating, which has been confirmed multiple times, most recently in 2018, reveals this idol is over 11,000 years old.
11,000.
Just let that sink in. To truly grasp that scale, you have to place it contextually. This artifact predates the earliest Egyptian pyramids by roughly 7,000 years. And it is significantly older than iconic Neolithic structures like Stonehenge. It stands as the oldest known wooden sculpture in the entire world, and it was created in the Mesolithic period, a time we traditionally associate with, relatively simple hunter-gatherer groups still recovering from the last ice age.
But the real mystery, the thing that breaks our timeline, it isn't just the age of the wood, but the art itself.
A sophistication.
Exactly.
Right?
The source describes it as being twice the height of a person. It was originally over 17 feet tall, though, parts have been lost over time.
And it's not some crude effigy. It's intricately carved. It features 7 distinct faces or masks, and its entire body is covered in these complex horizontal and zigzag geometric patterns.
This is where the archaeology just becomes profound. The sheer effort and skill required to carve something of that scale and complexity, using only stone tools.
And likely bone or horn implements for the fine detail work. It's remarkable. It implies advanced planning and a really specialized skill set within that ancient society. Furthermore, the geometric symbols, they aren't random. Researchers have identified what appear to be codified messages.
Yes, the sophistication suggests abstract thought, storytelling capacity, and maybe even a shared cosmology far, far earlier than we previously accepted. Scholars are now debating the meaning of these coded lines and faces. The most accepted theory, though it's still pretty unheard of in public discourse, is that the vertical structure of the idol represents the universe, a kind of mythological map.
That's right. One of the prevailing theories suggests the 7 faces represent beings or maybe deities of different worlds, some relating to the vertical world, upper, middle, and lower realms, and others relating to the horizontal world, maybe depicting boundaries between clans or concepts like male and female.
So the idea that a hunter-gatherer group 11,000 years ago had such a complex, systematic view of their cosmology and had the means to permanently record it, that just shatters the whole notion of primitive Stone Age man.
It really does. The bog saved the wood, but its true message remains locked away, waiting for a key we may never, ever find.
All right, moving from abstract art to potentially the dawn of communication itself, we turn to a much smaller, yet equally explosive find, the Tartaria tablets.
These were unearthed in 1961 in Tartaria, Romania. It was an archaeologist named Nicolae Vlasa during a Neolithic site excavation.
And the discovery site wasn't just a settlement, was it?
No, it was actually a burial pit. And these 3 small clay tablets were found right alongside ritual objects and the fragmented bones of an adult. The tablets themselves are minute, but they bear these incised symbols that, upon first examination, looked eerily like pictograms or some kind of proto-writing system.
And the controversy, the real bombshell here, centers entirely on the dating. This is the detail that sends shockwaves through academia.
It does. Carbon dating places these tablets at an estimated age of over 7,500 years old, linking them to the Vinja culture of Neolithic Europe.
Okay, so let's compare that to the standard model of literacy we're all taught.
Well, the earliest known systematic writing system is generally credited to the Sumerians in Mesopotamia. That's cuneiform, and it dates to around 5,200 years ago.
So the Tartaria tablets, if they are actually writing.
If they are, they predate the earliest Sumerian system by more than a millennium.
A full 1,000 years. If we confirm these marks as standardized, intentional, and systematic communication, a true writing system, it would dramatically shift the origin of literacy away from the Near East and the traditional cradle of civilization.
And plant it straight into Neolithic Europe. This isn't just a geographical shift, It implies a level of administrative and cultural organization in the Vinca culture that we simply do not attribute to them.
But this is where the fierce counterargument comes in, and why it's still a mystery.
Absolutely. Skeptics argue the symbols are not writing. They say they're merely decorative or religious markings tied to ritualistic practices. Maybe symbols of property or even just detailed Neolithic doodles.
And their main point is the lack of other evidence. Right.
Exactly. They point out that a true writing system requires thousands of consistent examples, and these three little tablets, lacking context and other supporting finds, simply don't offer enough data.
That's the critical hurdle. If the Vinci culture was literate 7,500 years ago, why haven't we found massive caches of standardized tablets across their other sites?
Well, the most complex unheard of theory tries to bridge this gap. It proposes that the Venetia symbols were indeed proto-writing, but, and this is the key part, it was used specifically for religious or sacred purposes by a specialized priestly class.
Ah, so it wasn't for everyday stuff like tracking grain.
Precisely. It wouldn't have been used for everyday administration or commerce like Sumerian writing was, and that would explain the scarcity of the finds.
It's a compelling argument, but I guess until a definitive Rosetta Stone is found for it, or until more systematic archaeological finds emerge.
The question of Europe's first script remains tantalizingly open. We have the age, we have the symbols, but we just lack the context to definitively transition them from ritual marks to true communication. It challenges us to redefine what the start of civilization really looks like.
Okay, so if the Shigur idol pushed history back by millennia, our next find pushes human origins back by millions of years. We are traveling to the Laetoli area of Tanzania, thanks to a discovery made in 1978 by the legendary paleoanthropologist Mary Leakey and her team.
Leakey was working near the site of Olduvai Gorge, which is, famous for its deep history, and she uncovered something just astonishing. A huge layer of volcanic ash ejected from the nearby Sadaman volcano over 3.6 million years ago had been perfectly preserved.
And someone walked across it.
Moments after the ash fell, 2 or 3 individuals walked across it. Then a subsequent rain cemented the ash, protecting the steps perfectly until their discovery.
The age, 3.6 million years old, it's staggering. But the observation itself is the real shocker.
It is. These are irrefutable fossilized impressions providing direct evidence of bipedalism. The tracks clearly show 2 individuals, one smaller and one larger, walking upright side by side in a manner strikingly similar to that of modern Homo sapiens.
And this just breaks the textbook model of human evolution. At 3.6 million years ago, the dominant hominins were likely Australopithecus afarensis, the species represented by Lucy.
Right. And while we know A. afarensis was bipedal, their skeletal structure suggested a slightly bent knee, kind of inefficient gait. It was often thought to be a transitional phase between climbing trees and efficient walking.
But the Laetoli tracks tell a completely different, much more advanced story.
They really do. Dr. Russell Tuttle, who's a leading expert on primate locomotion, he analyzed the prints and confirmed they show a short heel strike, a pronounced arch, and a toe-off motion.
So all the hallmarks of a modern human gait.
All of them. An efficient, modern-looking human gait. The feet that made those prints were essentially already modern human feet, long before the brain capacity or complex tool use we associate with Homo sapiens.
This raises some profound unanswered questions about our evolutionary sequencing. Did modern bipedal mechanics evolve far earlier than we previously thought? Maybe even before the development of large brains?
The implications are huge. It suggests that the evolutionary shift to efficient upright walking was prioritized much, much earlier than the cognitive leap.
And there's more. The narrative embedded in the prints is just haunting. They show the individuals walking together in step, maybe even holding hands, covering a distance of about 70 feet.
That question of why they were walking together in that precise modern manner 3.6 million years ago, it provides a direct, unmediated glimpse into a social moment that's just lost to time.
It challenges us to define what truly separates us from these advanced early ancestors. They walked like us, but their evolutionary stage was supposedly much more primitive. These footprints are just powerful pieces of evidence that our current evolutionary timeline needs a massive recalibration.
Our first segment really challenged when high civilization began. Now, we're going to shift to items that challenge the what artifacts whose symbolic language remains utterly resistant to interpretation, leaving ancient meanings sealed away like a time capsule.
And we move to something comparatively recent, a medieval codex known as the Voynich manuscript. It was named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912, though its existence was known long before that.
Yes. And carbon dating places its creation in the early 15th century, likely somewhere in Central Europe.
The time frame is modern, but the content is anything but.
That's for sure. The manuscript contains about 240 vellum pages, and they're filled with illustrations divided into these distinct sections. There's an herbal section with plants that don't exist in our known botany.
Right, they're completely unidentifiable.
Completely. Then there's an astronomical section with diagrams of constellations and sun and moon symbols that don't match any known celestial mappings. There are these strange, swirling cosmological diagrams, a pharmaceutical section, and finally, the infamous nude women section, filled with tiny illustrations of figures bathing in these interconnected green pools.
It reads like a medieval science textbook, written in an alien script. And the text itself is the ultimate cryptogram. It uses an unknown writing system, a unique alphabet with somewhere between 20 and 30 distinct characters, with its own specific orthography and formatting rules.
And this is precisely why it has baffled every single attempt at decipherment. We're talking about generations of brilliant minds trying to crack this code.
World War I codebreakers.
Expert cryptographers from the NSA, professional linguists, modern computational analysis teams, none of them have succeeded.
And to give you a taste of why they're so baffled, we need to get specific about its linguistic profile. The source material notes that it exhibits certain statistical features that are common to natural languages.
Right, things like Zipf's law, where a few words are used very frequently, and most are rare.
But it also has these bizarre anomalies. For instance, it has an incredibly low number of words that are only used once, a low hapax legomena count, which suggests a highly repetitive structure.
And conversely, some characters appear in specific positions, like only at the beginning or end of words, with a rigidity far greater than common Romance or Germanic languages. This unique statistical fingerprint makes it resistant to standard decryption methods like frequency analysis, which might suggest a simple cipher, but it also doesn't map cleanly onto any known language structure.
Which forces this enduring debate.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it a genuine lost language from some isolated or highly specialized culture? Or, and this is the most compelling unheard of theory, is it an elaborate, painstaking hoax?
Given its resistance to analysis, many scholars do propose it's a form of steganography, or maybe a text generated by random letter sequences meant to look like writing a meaningless cipher wrapped around fraudulent illustrations.
But the sheer volume, 240 pages, and the apparent internal consistency of the writing style, that argues against the simple hoax, doesn't it?
It does. One more complex theory suggests it's a highly encrypted coded message, perhaps utilizing a polyalphabetic substitution cipher, but requiring a one-time key that is now lost. The purpose remains the central mystery. Was it a coded medical treatise, a magical text, or an early attempt at scientific disinformation? For centuries, the Voynich manuscript has held the secret to its own existence.
From a complex book, we move to equally complex rock art, deep in the rock shelters of the lower Pecos Canyon lands of Texas in the U.S. These sites hold some of the oldest continuous spiritual narratives in North America, known as the Pecos River-style art, dating back as far as 4,000 years ago.
The scale is immense. There are thousands of individual figures painted across sheer cliff faces and sheltered overhangs. But the most enigmatic figures, and the ones highlighted by our sources, are the large anthropomorphic figures known colloquially as the dancing man or shaman figures.
And their description is stunningly specific. They are large, some up to 6 feet tall, and they're characterized by these incredibly elaborate headdresses, often featuring antlers, feathers, or geometric symbols.
And their forms are flowing, dynamic, almost always depicted in active, almost dancing or levitating poses. They're clearly not meant to be mere portraits, they're representations of immense spiritual power.
So the enigma here revolves entirely around decoding the symbolic language of these figures and the complex spiritual beliefs of the hunter-gatherer societies who created them.
Right, and unlike the art of settled agricultural societies, we have no accompanying written texts, no ceramic remnants, no supporting infrastructure to give context to this visual narrative.
So what were these ancient minds trying to convey? The complexity of the symbolism goes beyond just simple representation. The figures often hold complex objects, atolls, bundles of feathers, and sometimes even small, seemingly abstract geometric shapes layered over their bodies.
This forces us into the realm of, well, unheard of theories, specifically those dealing with altered states of consciousness.
Given the global pattern of ancient rock art, A highly debated but persistent theory is that these figures are literal depictions of spiritual journeys or visions induced by hallucinogens, such as peyote or related plants that are known to grow in the region.
So the flowing forms, the strange distortion of limbs, the juxtaposition of human and animal elements, that all fits the pattern of a visionary experience.
It certainly does. It's a powerful idea that these walls are not just art galleries, but permanent records of sacred, chemically induced rituals. The art would then serve as a guide for future shamans or as a record of mythological encounters.
If these are indeed visionary documents, it means the artists were highly skilled individuals capable of translating these profound transient psychological experiences into permanent, complex, and systematic visual symbols for communal reference.
And the ultimate mystery is how to interpret their placement. The sites are often deep in protected rock shelters, suggesting they were powerful, sacred spaces. The continuous layering of artwork over thousands of years suggests a continuous tradition. But without the key, without understanding the ritual context or the mythological narrative, we're left with a beautiful, dynamic, yet utterly silent record of an ancient spiritual world. The symbolism remains locked, resistant to any easy anthropological explanation.
Our focus shifts now from the intellectual capacity and symbolic language of the ancients to their ability to organize, mobilize, and engineer solutions that seem, well, impossible with the tools they had available. We're looking at structures that defied the definition of primitive.
We'll begin with the Olmec civilization, considered the first major civilization in Mesoamerica, dating from approximately 1400 to 400 BCE. They are famous for their monumental sculptures, particularly the colossal heads found primarily at sites like San Lorenzo and La Venta.
And these aren't just artistic sculptures. They're profound political statements. They are undeniably individualized representations of powerful Olmec rulers. Each one features unique facial characteristics and these elaborate helmet designs. To date, I think 17 distinct heads have been recovered.
And the engineering problem they present is one of staggering scale and logistics. The source specifies these are enormous basalt heads carved from singular boulders. Some of the largest examples weigh over 40 tons and stand up to 10 feet tall.
40 tons. That's the maximum payload of many modern articulated dump trucks.
Exactly. And the Olmec had no wheels for transport and certainly no motorized vehicles.
So here is the mystery that keeps engineers up at night. The basalt used for these carvings was quarried from distant volcanic mountains. Some sources say up to 70 miles away, primarily from the Tuxtla Mountains.
So they had to move these 40-ton, impossibly heavy objects not across a clean, paved Roman road, but through dense tropical jungle, across rivers, and often through swamps.
How was that even possible?
Well, logistical analysis suggests they would have likely utilized massive river barges for large segments of the journey using the Coatzacoalcos river system. However, even getting the stone from the quarry face to the riverbank would have required a huge organized workforce, massive wooden sleds or rollers, and probably temporary ramp systems, all built by hand using only stone tools and ropes.
Yet the evidence for the scale of this necessary infrastructure, the docks, the permanent ramp systems, the massive ropes, it's surprisingly sparse, isn't it?
It is, and that's just the transportation.
Right.
Once the basalt arrived at the ceremonial center, they had to intricately carve these features. Basalt is an extremely hard stone,
Right.
so achieving the fine detail required for the specific facial features, the subtle contours of the lips, and the elaborate helmet strapping. To do that in basalt using only stone hammers and chisels requires not only incredible patience, but an advanced, almost industrial level of organizational skill and sustained effort.
The very existence of these heads demands a society with a highly centralized authority, capable of organizing thousands of workers for quarrying, transportation, feeding, and highly specialized carving, all for a single political or ritual purpose.
And the unheard of theory here revolves around the sheer human organization required. It suggests the Olmec state was far more powerful and rigidly structured than we currently allow for, perhaps utilizing forced labor on a scale only later matched by the Aztecs or Maya.
And then there's the final twist, the abandonment enigma. Why did they go to this incredible effort, only for many of these monumental heads to be deliberately buried or defaced or rolled down hills?
This deliberate destruction, often aimed at the faces or the head coverings, suggests a complex political overthrow or some kind of religious purge. The deliberate vandalism suggests that the person represented and the system that created them was intentionally erased, leaving us without the final chapters of their magnificent logistical story.
Okay, our next architectural puzzle is completely different in form, but equally baffling in terms of precision. The Costa Rican stone spheres.
These are hundreds of orbs crafted by the extinct Dikees culture in the Dikees Delta region, dating between 200 BCE and 1500 CE.
What really captures the imagination is their sheer quantity and, more importantly, their geometric perfection. We are talking about hundreds of these stone balls scattered over a significant area. They range from small, softball-sized pieces all the way up to colossal creations over 2 meters in diameter and weighing as much as 16 tons.
And the precision mystery is paramount. How did the Dikees culture achieve such remarkable sphericity without modern measuring instruments and, critically, without steel or power tools?
What were they working with?
They used local stone, primarily granodiorite, which is dense and difficult to work. Achieving a smooth, perfect curve across the entire surface of a 16-ton boulder using only fire, hammering, and abrasives, which were likely the only techniques available, is just a phenomenal feat of manual engineering.
To put this into perspective, replicating that degree of perfection today requires high-precision machinery.
Absolutely. The Dakelas likely used extremely careful measurement systems, perhaps involving plumb lines, water leveling, and repeated grinding. The implication is that they had a sophisticated, possibly ritualized approach to mathematics and geometry that we simply don't have a record of.
So what was their function?
Well, that's widely debated. They were sometimes found in alignments, straight lines, triangles, or groups of four, which leads to theories that they served astronomical purposes, maybe marking solstices or aligning with specific stars. Other theories suggest they were symbols of rank, territorial markers, or held deep religious significance, perhaps related to the sun or other celestial bodies.
And this is where the local legends come into play, offering the most colorful, unheard-of theories.
They do. Local tales often speak of the spheres being creations of the god of thunder, who used a gigantic hammer to form them. Other, more modern speculative legends link them directly to the legendary lost city of Atlantis, suggesting they are relics of a much older, highly advanced global culture.
But sadly, the chance for serious study has been compromised.
Severely. The sources note that systematic destruction, displacement, and removal of many spheres, often taken as garden decoration or stolen by treasure hunters, means that we've lost so much of the original context of their groupings and alignments. We know how they were likely made by analyzing tool marks, but the why, the organizational and scientific impetus behind such massive, perfect, repetitive effort remains a beautiful, silent puzzle.
So in this final segment, we are moving into the realm where high speculation collides directly with compelling yet often isolated archaeological evidence. These are the mysteries that often rely on the most obscure or unheard of theories to explain what we see, pushing the very boundaries of accepted history.
Let's look at the Ubaid period of Mesopotamia. Now, this is the period dating from roughly 6500 to 3800 BCE, long before the rise of the iconic Sumerians. It's the time of the earliest agricultural settlements that eventually gave rise to urban civilization.
And archaeologists have unearthed these very strange figurines, primarily at ancient sites like Ur and Eridu.
And their appearance is genuinely disturbing and unique. They depict human-like bodies with these elongated, almost alien heads and distinct reptilian faces.
And the details are clearly rendered. Gender is explicitly marked on many of the figures, and some are shown holding objects like staffs, or even suckling infants, which is a clear indication of a nurturing or priestly role.
This is the profound mystery. Their iconography. What did they represent to the Ubaid people? The unique reptilian features stand completely apart from the art of later, better understood Mesopotamian cultures. They don't seem to map onto the pantheon of Sumerian or Akkadian deities that followed thousands of years later.
So were they highly stylized representations of ancient deities, maybe connected to water or fertility or even an early underworld concept? Or were they mythical creatures integral to the Ubaid creation story, beings that predated humans?
The most elaborate and context-driven theory suggests they are not deities or creatures at all, but depictions of high priests and priestesses wearing elaborate symbolic masks during key rituals.
Oh, interesting.
If this is true, the masks represented a spiritual or cosmological concept, perhaps regeneration or a connection to early chthonic forces that was central to Ubaid religious identity. And given the figurines are found in household and burial contexts, they clearly held deep personal and communal significance.
The iconographic gap is the limiting factor here. The Ubaid culture is so early that we lack written records, meaning we have no supporting mythology or religious texts to explain what they mean.
Exactly. They offer an isolated, cryptic glimpse into the very earliest, complex beliefs of humanity's first great societies. They force us to acknowledge that the foundations of Mesopotamian religion were perhaps far more alien and complex than the later, well-documented Sumerian myths suggest. Without supporting context, the meaning of these lizard-like figures remains a profound puzzle locked in the sands of the earliest city-states.
Okay, we now move into one of the most famous examples of fringe archaeology, where the narrative is incredibly compelling, but the physical evidence has always been slippery. We're talking about the Drapa stones.
This mystery is centered in the Bayankara Ula Mountains of China. The core discovery story, which is itself the subject of immense controversy, alleges that in 1938, an archaeological expedition led by a Dr. Chi Pute discovered a series of interconnected caves.
And inside these caves, they supposedly found evidence of a dwarf-like people and hundreds of these stone discs.
Right. The source describes these discs as being about a foot in diameter, featuring a central hole and, critically, a spiral groove emanating outwards from the center. This groove was said to be densely filled with tiny, complex, hieroglyph-like characters.
And this is where the story truly rockets into the unheard-of alien theory.
It does. Decades later, a Chinese researcher, Nui name, whose existence is often debated, allegedly began translating the characters. The claim is that when the discs were played on a special turntable, they vibrated, suggesting they were records or some kind of data storage device.
In the translation.
The translated hieroglyphs supposedly told an incredible story, a narrative detailing that alien visitors, called the Drapa, crash-landed on Earth approximately 12,000 years ago. Their spacecraft was destroyed and they were unable to repair it. The inscriptions detailed their peaceful intentions and their inability to return home, creating this profound 12,000-year-old tale of intergalactic castaways.
Now, we have to be very clear here and present the scientific dismissal, because this theory relies almost entirely on secondary accounts and faith.
There is a profound lack of verifiable evidence. The alleged original discs have disappeared, there is no verifiable photograph of Dr. Chiputai, and the translations themselves have been dubbed highly dubious and untraceable by reliable sinologists. Most credible academics view the entire tale as a fabrication built on a mixture of misinterpreted artifacts and, Cold War-era fantasy.
Still, the captivating nature of the tale, the idea of stone discs functioning as ancient data storage, detailing a 12,000-year-old space crash, ensures its persistent popularity as a fringe mystery.
It's a perfect example of how a compelling, unheard-of theory can fill a vacuum of evidence regardless of the scientific facts. It really challenges us to separate verified archaeology from captivating narrative.
Our final enigma takes us from deep space back down to Earth, but it still connects us to history's greatest lost civilization, Atlantis. We are looking at the Richat structure, often called the Eye of the Sahara.
It's a geographical identity so striking it was often used by early astronauts to orient themselves just because of its perfect circularity.
So what is it, geologically speaking?
This structure, located in Mauritania, is enormous, a nearly perfectly circular erosion feature spanning almost 30 miles across. The standard accepted geological explanation is unambiguous. It is a deeply eroded domed anticline. That means an ancient, symmetrical bubble of rock that was pushed up by geological forces, and then erosion wore away the different layers of rock at different rates, creating the concentric ring pattern we see today.
But the visual evidence, particularly the satellite imagery, has fueled one of the most sensational unheard-of theories in speculative archaeology.
Absolutely. Proponents argue that the structure's uncanny resemblance to Plato's precise description of Atlantis is too strong to ignore. Plato described the capital city of Atlantis as having alternating concentric rings of land and water separated by canals. The Richat structure perfectly displays these concentric geological rings.
And the proponents of the Atlantis theory, they point to extremely specific details, don't they?
They do. They highlight the structure's diameter, which they claim matches Plato's measurements for the outer ring of the Atlantean capital. Furthermore, they note that the region, thousands of years ago, was not a desert. It was green, temperate, and crisscrossed by massive ancient waterways that would have flowed through the structure, supporting that idea of concentric rings of land and water.
If you look closely at the central area, you can even see 2 freshwater springs and evidence of old river runoff channels, which lends support to the hydrological aspect of Plato's description.
The theory posits that the structure, once partially submerged or heavily watered, was the site of the legendary capital, destroyed either by a seismic event or by rising seas.
But the ultimate limiting factor here is a classic archaeological problem of scale.
It is. If this was a massive, highly sophisticated city-state, the capital of a legendary continent, The geological match is stunning, but the hard evidence of human occupation is entirely missing. We have no definitive major archaeological findings, no large sophisticated walls, no palaces, no extensive artifacts or harbor structures to support the existence of a major city there.
It perfectly illustrates the difference between geological coincidence and archaeological proof. The geographic identity is strong, it's compelling, and it keeps the mystery alive.